Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Chantier. Coming up on this week's show, on the ground with French troops charged with training Iraqi special forces, making key gains in Mosul. Moving the US embassy to Jerusalem, a potential game changer in the region. Plus, the Iran nuclear deal a year on. Could the incoming Donald Trump administration dismantle the historic accord? Recapturing Mosul is a matter of weeks, not years. That's according to François Hollande, who sent troops to Iraq to train government and Peshmerga forces in the country in late 2014. Today, the fight rages on for the last stronghold of the Islamic State group, and a team of France television reporters were on the ground to capture the operation.
This neighborhood on the outskirts of Mosul used to be Islamic State group territory. The jihadists are now gone, and Iraqi anti-terror troops and French forces are inspecting the area. Their goal, finding clues that will help them learn as much as possible about the terror group, its fighting techniques and weapons.
Detonators are important. The jihadists use them to set up traps with explosives.
The Islamic State group is known for booby-trapping areas it's forced to evacuate. The militants dug holes in the walls, creating labyrinths that allow them to cross the whole neighborhood without being seen.
The tunnel goes 4 or 5 meters down and then turns left.
Arrows indicate directions, and various inscriptions were used to pass information.
Here they wrote, "Watch out for the planes." It means coalition planes used to fly over this neighborhood.
This is a sniper's position from which they used to fire at Iraqi troops advancing toward the building. On the balcony, French soldiers spot a broken drone. The Islamic State group often fills them with explosives to attack their enemies. 2 special forces soldiers were severely wounded by a drone a few weeks ago. Experts need to seize the drone to learn more about the material the jihadists use, but they're careful not to trigger any explosive it could potentially contain. French troops are needed close to the Syrian border, this time to assist Kurdish troops. It's a secret position on the Raqqa-Mosul axis, a route often used by the Islamic State group.
Hello. Yeah. Welcome, my brother. Welcome. I told you I will come here. You come. One month more. Thank you.
The area is an observation point. In recent days, it has been bombed with mortars repeatedly. French forces set up their material, weapons to defend themselves, and their surveillance system.
The Peshmerga told us civilians have no night activity in this village. This means any heat, vehicles and movement we detect is linked to the fighters.
Whatever information they obtain, the French pass it on to Kurdish and Iraqi forces. The goal, make their situation safer, help them move faster, and be more efficient.
Let's now take a brief look at what's making headlines in the region. At least 10,000 people have been killed in the conflict in Yemen. That's the latest figure released by the United Nations, which has urged both sides to come together to end nearly 2 years of bloodshed, which has also displaced some 3 million people. The Yemen war pits the Houthi rebels reportedly backed by Iran against an Arab coalition led by Saudi Arabia in support of President Abdrabbuh Mansur Hadi's government. Bahrain has executed 3 Shia men found guilty of killing 3 police officers in its first executions since Arab Spring's uprisings in 2011. The death by firing squad has triggered violent protests, stoking tensions between the country's Shia minority and its Sunni rulers. Bahrain, ruled by the Al Khalifa dynasty, has long been accused of marginalizing its Shia population, and it's been rocked by sporadic unrest since 2011. Deepening a rift between 2 Middle Eastern nations. This time it's Cairo and Riyadh, and tensions were heightened after an Egyptian court upheld a ruling that the government would not hand over 2 Red Sea islands to its main financial backer, Saudi Arabia. The deal signed last year sparked rare protests in Egypt. Next to the peace conference here in Paris, which closed on Sunday, calling on both Israel and Palestinians to embrace a two-state solution as the only way to achieve a lasting peace. This as representatives from 17 nations came together with the aim of bringing both sides to the table. The only problem, it was held without either party, and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed the international conference as futile. Now it's a question that's weighing on the minds of officials in Israel, Palestine, and the wider region. Will Donald Trump move America's embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? The status of the city is one of the most intricate issues in the Middle East. Palestinians consider Eastern Jerusalem as the capital of the future state, while Israel claims the entire city as its capital. Haxie Meyers Belkin takes a look at a decision that could reverse years of US policy.
A diplomatic decision that could enrage the Arab world. During his presidential campaign, Donald Trump told Benjamin Netanyahu that he planned to transfer the US embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Since the creation of the Jewish state in 1948, Jerusalem has been the source of bitter conflict between Jews and Palestinians. For the UN, the east of the city, which Palestinians insist would become the capital of any future Palestinian state, is currently under Israeli occupation. Up till now, the US has preserved at least the impression of neutrality with their embassy in Tel Aviv. For the outgoing Obama administration, changing that would be tantamount to recognizing Israel's exclusive claim to the city.
You'd have an explosion, an absolute explosion in the region, not just in the West Bank and perhaps even in Israel itself, but throughout the region. The Arab world has enormous interest in the Haram al-Sharif, as it is called, the Temple Mount.
Temple Mount, as it's known by Jews and by Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, is a site sacred to both religions in the heart of the city. It's so sensitive that it's managed by a third party, Jordan. Recently, a man described the transfer of the US embassy to Jerusalem as a red line. France, meanwhile, which has just hosted a Middle East peace conference, sees the proposed move as reckless.
I think there would be grave consequences. It's not the first time the US has considered changing the location of their embassy in Israel, but no American president, despite what they may have insinuated, has ever followed through with that particular proposition.
Mahmoud Abbas, for his part, has written to Trump, warning him of a disastrous fallout if he pushes ahead with the relocation, and threatening to withdraw Palestinian recognition of the State of Israel. The Palestinian Authority fears that the incoming Trump administration has already sided with Israel's right-wing government.
We can't really comment on this before it's confirmed, but it's not something that would aid peace. We hope it's not going to happen.
For the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the proposal to move the US embassy isn't merely an aggression towards Palestinians, but to all Arabs and Muslims. In his weekly Friday sermon, he told some 30,000 worshippers that they wouldn't let the embassy transfer to Jerusalem without a fight.
We finish with one of the most historic deals of our time. That is the Iran nuclear accord, also known as the JCPOA, which was struck in July 2015, as you can see in these memorable images here. It was implemented 6 months later. It saw international sanctions lifted against Tehran in exchange for limiting the country's nuclear program. Today, a year on, it faces a minefield of challenges, including the incoming Donald Trump administration.
January 2017, a brand new Airbus aircraft lands at Tehran's Mehrabad airport, a sight unthinkable only a year ago. In January 2016, part of the international sanctions against Iran were lifted under a nuclear agreement struck between Iran and world powers 6 months before, allowing more foreign investment, a potential $30 to $50 billion per year, according to Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. But the election of Donald Trump to the White House has cast a shadow on the landmark deal, a situation that has prompted this leather factory in Tehran to look for partners elsewhere.
I think that in the future, because of Mr. Trump's behavior and the breaking of promises by America, we'll gradually move towards working independently with Europe.
The US president-elect, who is set to take office on January 20th, has called the deal disastrous and promised to dismantle it, putting the agreement at threat, according to Iranian experts.
1 or 2 years, we're going to have serious problems with the nuclear agreement because of what you will see from the US Congress. The people who never liked the agreement, the people who voted against the agreement, are going to be energized to basically get rid of it without actually tearing it apart.
Since the deal, Iran has been able to ramp up its vital oil exports, but US sanctions related to non-nuclear issues remain in place, making foreign banks reluctant to handle large transactions with Tehran. And many Iranians have lost faith in the deal's ability to bring change.
We haven't seen any real changes, but authorities keep saying it's a long-term thing. Still, we need some short-term changes soon, in the next 2 to 3 years, to remain hopeful.
Iranians are growing more impatient, but so are foreign investors, attracted by the potential of a country rich in oil and gas. Several delegations have flocked to Tehran in recent months. Still, all bets will be off if Donald Trump scraps what he has called the worst deal ever negotiated.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of Middle East Matters. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Thanks for watching.